Well, hello again, dear friends and neighbors. Mike Trow for the Saline County Libertarian Party. As you can tell, I'm unbearable this month. No polar bear. I know you're going to write me and yell at me, but I'm sorry. I don't have the time. You know, I hear about those teachers who they have all kinds of time this summer. I'd love to be one of them, but alas, I'm not. So here we are. So I got a bunch of videos for you to watch this month. But I do have one thing that I really want to say this month. Everybody runs around talking about their rights. I got rights, man. Okay, yeah, you got rights, but you got responsibilities too that go along with it. Every human being has those rights. And those rights do not come to you from a benevolent government, but they come to you from God, okay? Now, some governments come in and try to take them from you, but still, they come from God. They do not come from a government. But I do have 9 things that I would love to talk to you about. As you can tell, I'm using a cell phone, not a script this month. I didn't have time to get the ink to put in the printer. Okay. Now, there are 9 of these, and we'll run through them here. You have the right to express your opinion. Yes, you do. But at the same time, you must respect other people's opinions. 2, you have the right to practice your religion as you see it. But at the same time, you must be respectful of other people and their religion. 3, you can protest what you dislike, but you do not have the right to destroy other people's property when you do it. Okay? 4, you have the right to vote for your leaders, but you have the responsibility to find out who those people are. Okay? Number 5, you have the right to be treated with respect, but you have the responsibility to treat others with respect. 6, you have the right to be treated fairly, but you have the responsibility to treat others fairly. 7, you have the right to speak freely, but you have the responsibility not to harm anyone else with your words. Number 8, you have the right to be safe in your home and in public, but you have the responsibility not to endanger other people with your actions. You have the right to privacy, but you have the responsibility not to infringe on anyone else's privacy. County Commissioner Monty Shadwick was asked here not too long ago who he's donating his salary to. Commissioner Shadwick just looked at the man and says, none of your damn business. No, that's my private business, and who we want to donate to doesn't matter to you at all. And that's the way it should be, folks. Just think about this for a second. You know, you have rights, yes, but with every right comes that responsibility. You know, you must always think of it in that term. Well, like I said, it's going to be short and sweet this month. You only have 1 slide, you know, so I hope you enjoy that. It's a very busy time for me. I'm getting ready to do something else here. There's people out here getting ready to throw things at me, so I'm going to have to stop. But remember, first Saturday of every month out at Mocha's South, 10 a.m., walk right on in and talk to us. Hey, we're good people. We haven't ran anybody off yet. Well, folks, that's the way it is. On Thursday, July the 14th, 2016, for the Saline County Libertarian Party, this is Mike Trow. May God bless.
Gary Johnson was the Republican governor of New Mexico from 1995 to 2003 and is now running for president of the United States as a libertarian. We have a lot to get to in a short amount of time. Governor, Nice to see you.
Dave, great to be with you.
So,
and I'm seeking the Libertarian nomination. And the Libertarian nominee will be on the ballot in all 50 states. So really, the Libertarian nominee is the legitimate third party.
all right. Well, I'm glad to hear that. And we just talked a lot of this out in the green room, and we're in a time situation here. That's
Go for it.
That's why we're on
Go
Larry
for it.
King's set. And there's a lot I want to talk to you about because, as I told you a few minutes ago, I've had a lot of my audience saying, Dave's going to come out as a libertarian one of these days. You know, I've sort of evolved out of this progressive thing, and they want me to say it. So I'm going to let you sell it. So sell me on libertarianism. Give me Libertarianism 101.
Well, libertarian, this is what I say with a broad brushstroke. Libertarians are fiscally responsible and socially liberal. If you look up the definition of a classic liberal, if you Wikipedia a classic liberal, I'm a classic liberal.
Right.
And I think most people fall in that category. Right now, there's a website, isidewith.com. In 2012, that was also online, isidewith. And most of the people that took that test aligned with me. And so most people in this country are actually classical liberals. I think they are libertarian, they just don't know it.
So what's actually the difference between classical liberal, because that's really where I would say I'm at right this very moment. I mean, when I was 12, I remember wanting Michael Dukakis to win. I've always thought I was a liberal. And then I sort of went down the progressive route. But now I see sort of less government as a sensible alternative. So what's the difference between classical liberal and libertarian?
I don't know is there's a difference. That's what I'm saying. That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. I'm saying that I think they are, speaking with a broad brushstroke, one and the same. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and classical liberal is actually considered a conservative principle, right?
Yes, I mean that's how it all started. Right, that's how it all started out. But the conservatives have lost their way, in my opinion, with a social conservative agenda that I think turns a lot of people off, and rightfully so. It doesn't allow people to make their own personal choices, recognize their own personal liberties and freedoms, and of course the responsibility that goes along with that.
Right. So on two of the things that are the easy ones, like gay marriage and recreational or even medicinal marijuana, shouldn't these be easy thing for you? This is an easy thing, right? Because you want limited government, so it doesn't matter.
Yes, and a woman's right to choose. I mean, throw that in there. Just basic decisions. You as an individual should be the only one. I mean, these are difficult. I don't want to say that marriage equality is a difficult personal choice, but, you know, take abortion, for example. I mean, that's a difficult issue, but who but the woman involved should be making that choice? Right.
So what happened then to the Republican Party that should be for small government and should really be for states' rights? The things that I think you're saying you're for, what happened to them that they got mucked up in these issues that really they should be against?
I don't know, but they certainly have gotten mucked up, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And with regard to Republicans, look, they've always hung their hat on being fiscally conservative. Well, where did that go? I mean, they want to cut spending in social areas, but they want to increase spending when it comes to the military. They are growing government just like Democrats.
So is that the dangerous thing more than anything else? That the one guy who was talking about making government smaller in this entire election cycle was Rand Paul. He didn't even get out of the Iowa caucus.
I agree, and I think that Rand Paul, really, if he wasn't a social conservative, I think there would have been a lot more appeal. I happen to agree with half of everything that Rand Paul has to say.
Right.
But when it comes to those social issues, that's where we part ways.
Right. So he just won't absolute say that he's for gay marriage or for.
He'll say let the states decide that, but personally he would say that no, he's opposed to these issues. Well, personally, I'm not opposed to allowing a person to make these choices, believing in my heart of hearts that these are decisions that only the person involved should be making.
Right. So then does that right there go to how dysfunctional our system is, which probably explains why Bernie and Trump are working, because those are the
So the system right now is the Republican nominee has to cater to 30% of the far right. That's what the Republican nominee is appealing to, 30% far right. The Democrat nominee is appealing to 30% of the far left. When you have 45% of the electorate declaring themselves as independent, what you end up with the two major candidates is a solid 30% representation of the electorate, which is really nuts.
Okay, I'm with you. So your sell job is working so far. I'm fully with you. So what do we do to explain to people? I think people think, when you say to someone you're a libertarian, I think they think you want to dismantle the government. You want people to run around only defending themselves, and roads are going to crumble because the government won't be able to sustain them. They're crumbling anyway, even though the government's involved with them. So what do you do to remove some of the stigma from libertarianism?
Well, I got to serve as governor of New Mexico for 8 years, and guess what? I think things worked a lot better, and in a state that was 2-to-1 Democrat, and having gotten reelected the second time by a bigger margin than the first time.
Yeah. Now you were a Republican though, but you were using a lot of libertarian principles.
Yes, I mean, I was always the finger was always pointing at me, saying, "Well, really, he's a libertarian," which I always thought was a real compliment, and I still do to this day, because it's a lot more clear. You know where a libertarian stands when it comes to all the issues. I remember growing up getting this book on here's where, a very short book on here's where, this is what a libertarian is. And I remember saying, I'm a libertarian. And this was, I want to say I was 14 or 15 years old. Wow, I'm a libertarian.
Yeah.
Well, I remember when I was contemplating running for governor of New Mexico, I showed up at the state libertarian meeting, and it took me about 45 seconds to come to grips with the fact that I would never hold office if I ran as a libertarian.
So what was that about?
Well, just the fact that really disorganized. There aren't many libertarians, but that isn't to say the libertarians aren't principally correct. And libertarianism is really all principle. And yes, less government is better. The biggest issue facing our country right now, I think, is the fact that we continue to spend more money than what we take in. And the ramifications of this at some point is going to be a monetary collapse, and that's going to be ugly. Really, really, really ugly.
Yeah, so I know a ton of my supporters, or a ton of my fans are Bernie supporters. And I like Bernie. I think he's talking about the right things. But you know, this idea that college is free and the rest of this stuff, you would argue that these things simply aren't free and the government probably shouldn't have anything to do with them. Right?
So half of what Bernie says. Wow. Yeah. Right on. Spot on.
Right. So that you're talking about campaign finance and things like that.
Well, campaign finance and back to individuals making choices in their own lives, and that there is a corporate America. The crony capitalism is alive and well. I recognize that. Spot on. But then when he starts talking about spending and what government should provide, and a huge, gigantic expansion of government, it's just not possible, Dave. I mean, I'm in the camp that believes that there will be a monetary collapse, and it will be because of inflation, and it'll be a bond market collapse because nobody will be holding on to bonds because inflation will be rising at such a rate that bonds won't be anything that you'll want to hold on to.
Because basically the government is just going to spend and spend and spend and spend,
well,
and it's backed by...
It's backed by nothing, and people then recognize it. And like I say, if you get into hyperinflation, which in my opinion, at some point, will be the conclusion to all of this, you're not going to hold on to a bond when it may be devaluing at the rate of many percentage points a day. You're just not going to hold on to it.
Yeah, so
that's a bond market collapse.
Right. So is part of the problem then that what you just explained to me, that's sort of lofty stuff to be talking about?
It is. Right? It is. But it is out there also. And how do you make that as simple as possible? A monetary collapse is when the dollars that you have don't buy a thing. So let's try and just define it in reality. You're not going to be able to buy anything at the grocery store because there'll be nothing on the shelves. People will have recognized that you've got to take all the money that you have and buy everything that you possibly can because it's not going to be worth anything tomorrow. Right. That's a monetary collapse that is something that's repeated itself in countries time and time over the history of mankind.
Right. So this is
we're not immune from that.
So that's sort of like what happened in Greece like a year ago, and then everyone rushes to the banks, then the banks don't let people take
happened
money.
In Russia, happened in Zimbabwe. Like I say, this at some point, in my opinion, is going to be the outcome of all this.
So is part of the problem messaging then? Because on one hand, I see Bernie going, here's free college, that's great. Young people go, that free college sounds great. And then you have Trump just throwing out this red meat about Muslims or immigration or whatever it is. Like, they're just giving easy answers. What you just talked about making government smaller and bonds and our monetary system, that's, we need a better bumper sticker for that kind of stuff, right?
Right, and it doesn't quite fit into a soundbite. Doesn't quite fit into a soundbite, but liberty, freedom, personal responsibility, being
John Stuart Mill, right?
Well, being fiscally conservative, the way that we live our own lives.
I wish I could spend the way the government does. Wouldn't that be sweet?
Well, you would know that
for a little while, right? For a couple of years.
If you never had to pay it back, if you could get away with that kind of a Ponzi scheme, but you're not going to get away with it, nor is the government.
So what is we're trying to pack in a lot here in a little amount of time.
Yes,
so I'm
thank you.
Jumping. Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah, so what is the libertarian view on foreign policy? Because one of the interesting things that I was seeing in the GOP debates is that these guys are all very to the right. Like, we don't talk about nation building anymore, but there's still a lot of talk about war and bombing. And Rand was the one guy that was saying, maybe we need to do something a little more nuanced here. He's no longer part of this thing. So what would be the true libertarian view on foreign policy?
Well, first of all, anyone that's going to do us harm, whether that's individuals, groups, corporations, foreign governments, that's a government responsibility to protect us against those that would do us harm. There is a real Islamic terrorist threat out there. Is it best addressed with military intervention? No, military interventions, I'm going to say, are making things worse. So do we address it with boots on the ground, more bombs, more drone strikes? No. What we need to do is cut off the funding, in my opinion, to the politics of Islamic extremism, which is Sharia law.
Yeah, so you're making the distinction, and this is one of the things we talk about all the time, between the religious aspect and the political side.
We are to the death. We're going to fight for religious freedom and allow religious freedom, but we need to recognize that the politics of Islamic extremism is Sharia law, and it is absolutely incompatible with the U.S. Constitution, starting with women's rights.
Yeah, so what do you make of some of our alliances then? Saudi Arabia is a great example of this, a country that basically is governed by Sharia law, that women still can't drive, they can sort of vote now. I mean, there's a litany of things. They're doing quite the beheading thing too. It's not just ISIS, and yet they're one of our biggest allies.
So it starts with awareness. We need to bring about this awareness within the United States that has not really been clearly defined. And I think this does offer this clear distinction between the politics of Islamic extremism, Sharia law, and freedom of religion, Islam. But it starts with awareness, and we're not there.
Yeah. What do you make of how generally I feel like our education system has failed to the point where people don't understand basically how government's supposed to work? Like, when I listen to Trump and I listen to Bernie, they're saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, or any of the candidates, I'm going to do this. But what they don't realize is the executive branch, the president is just supposed to sign things into law. The legislative branch, Congress and the Senate, are supposed to make the laws, and the judicial branch is supposed to make sure they're legal. And I feel like nobody really understands that. We think we're voting for a president like, oh, here's the king.
Here's the dictator.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, too.
Right. So in everything I say, look, I want you to understand what my positions are on this issue. But the reality is that Congress does have to pass these initiatives, and don't discount the power of the veto. Speaking specifically about myself, as governor of New Mexico, I may have vetoed more legislation than the other 49 governors in the country combined.
Really?
I said no to this legislation, which in my opinion was just going to add time and money to our lives and wasn't going to affect our lives in any way. That there would be a political, an attempt to politically address issues that really weren't addressing the issues at all.
Yeah.
But you do draw a really, really important distinction. Look, we're not electing a dictator. We're electing a president who can sign or veto, but we need to know where that president is at philosophically. And then, not to be discounted is that the president of the United States, governor of a state, administratively runs government.
Right.
So there is a bias, if you will, toward fiscal austerity if you have a president who's going to be fiscally austere. As governor of New Mexico, they wouldn't cut government as much as I wanted. So basically, we took the money and we spent less money than was appropriated and put the money in the bank.
Right.
Of course, my predecessor then ended up spending it all, but there was money in the bank. The coffers were full when I left, but that was a promise that I made.
So a lot of that has to do with our election system and how screwed up that is, because in a certain way, as a governor, it doesn't even behoove you to not spend all the money because you want people to see that there's a lot of things done, whether they can be paid for or not. So you were putting money away, which is great.
I put the money away,
Yeah.
and I think people more than recognize that. And I got reelected. And by the way, here's another a silver bullet to the system.
Yeah.
Is term limits. And I'm the best example I can think of term limits. I really enjoyed the job, but I knew that maximum I had 8 years, so I kind of pushed the envelope as much as I possibly could for 4 years, and then it was Katie bar the door the last 4 years because I wasn't going to get reelected. There was no, I didn't even have that opportunity.
Yeah.
So if term limits were enacted, I think that politicians would do the right thing as opposed to whatever it takes to get reelected, because that's really what it's all about. It's a system that people get into it. They've never been involved in it before. It's very alluring, and they want to stay in it at any cost whatsoever. So they sell their souls to stay in it.
Yeah, not only do they sell their souls, they sell everything around them, right? Everything is
crony capitalism is alive and well. There's a price for favoritism, and big corporations pay for that, and it's for sale.
Can you give me an example of that? Because I know we talk about this a lot.
So in the case of New Mexico, I remember there was a bill that came before me for signatures called the Telecommunications Equality Act.
Sounds good.
Telecommunication Competitive Act.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't competitive at all. Quest Communications, it gave them more of an upper hand than they already had, and I vetoed the bill. Mm-hmm. But it was labeled telecommunications competitive legislation, when in fact it wasn't at all.
Right. Now, were they giving you money at the same time?
They weren't giving me anything, but they had obviously greased this through the legislature in New Mexico. Sure, they greased it.
Yeah. So is there any hope for, I think you're going to say yes because you're running, but is there really any hope for people with integrity to be in this system?
So back to term limits.
Yeah.
I think that people get involved in this for all the right reasons. Initially, I think that they get involved for the right reasons, doing the right thing. Well, if you had term limits, would you actually sign off on this telecommunications bill that I was talking about if you knew that it really wasn't the right thing? I think you'd probably say, well, no, I think we'll pass on that because it's really not fair.
Yeah. So I know I got to let you go. You did some work here. I think you pushed me a little bit further. Do you have a closing argument?
Well, closing argument is there's a website isidewith.com. It was up last cycle, and it's up.
Still up. I did about half of it. I need to do the other half to figure it out. But I did another one, and I came out as late.
And as of right now, I do not believe I'm on the site because I've recently announced. But I think that within a very short amount of time, I will be on the site. And I think that everyone should get on that site, answer 36 questions and where you're at on the issues of the day. And I happen to think that if you would do that, I'm making this pitch, if you would do that, I think you're going to find that you end up being paired up with a guy named Gary Johnson.
Yeah, and then see what happens.
Well, and it's one thing to philosophically be in line with what most people think. It's another thing to actually be qualified to be president of the United States and that you might actually do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to also make that pitch.
Yeah. All right. So final thought, and then I'm going to let you go, is so you ran as a Republican Republican 4 years ago.
I did.
And you were in some of the debates. And, you know, I always find them so ridiculous because they're not really debates, right? They're just pointed questions or whatever.
Yeah.
What do we do to make these debates better? Because we got more of them. I've been tweeting all of them. I find them infuriating. What do we do to make debate?
Right now, I am suing the Presidential Debate Commission. People wonder why there's not another choice. Well, at the heart of this is a Presidential Debate Commission. The contention on our part is if you are on the ballot in enough states to mathematically be elected president, shouldn't you be in the presidential debates? I think that could be an absolute game changer. And we're suing the Presidential Debate Commission on the grounds of antitrust, the Sherman Act, that politics is a business, not much of a stretch, and that they collude with one another to exclude everybody else. That's the reality.
And we know it doesn't take very much to know that, because we know that the parties, the DNC and the RNC, are working directly with the networks to figure out who they want to put.
Well, and we actually think that the networks actually sign documents also to collude in this conspiracy, if you want to call it that.
Wow, interesting. All right,
interesting.
well,
It's interesting.
I hope next time you'll come back and we can do a full hour, and we'll do it on my set. And I'm going to take the iSide.com. I'll finish it, and then I'll let you know the results.
And wait a couple days, or give me a chance to be the name that potentially might pop up.
Fair enough. All right, well, I want to thank Governor Gary Johnson for joining me today, and you can find out more about his campaign and probably donate. There's probably a donate button on there, right?
There probably
is a donate button.
We're raising hundreds of dollars, by the way.
Hundreds?
I'm kidding. Yeah. I'm kidding.
GaryJohnson2016.com. All right, thank you, Governor.
Thank you.
Hi there. My name is Kerry Burt, and I am your Libertarian candidate for Congress in the 1st Congressional District, Kansas. And I'd like to take just a second to introduce myself. The first thing you should know about me is that I am not a politician. I have never held political office, I have never pursued political office, and I have no particular desire to hold political office. I'm an aircraft mechanic, and I'm perfectly happy doing just that. But people ask me on occasion, Kerry, why do you want to run for Congress? It's clear you have no interest in the job, and you have absolutely no experience. And they're right, especially on that last part. I don't have any experience. I don't have any experience sending people to die in wars that nobody understands. I don't have any experience taxing people into oblivion or regulating industries into obsolescence. I don't have any experience telling people who they should love or what they should put in their bodies. I really don't have much in the way of experience, but maybe that's okay. After all, look where experience has gotten us so far. What I do have is an alternate idea of how government ought to run. See, I think this country was founded under the idea that the individual is king. The only thing standing between you and your dreams is yourself. Government has a different idea, though. See, government has the idea that the only thing standing between you and your dreams is more government. And it sees itself more as a gateway than an impediment. One more law, one more regulation, one more subsidy, one more tax. Any of these things could be the final step necessary to propel you into a glorious future. But it never seems to work out quite that way, does it? We have civil unrest in the streets here at home. We're embroiled in conflicts around the globe. Washington is utter chaos, and the national debt has reached catastrophic levels. It's time for a different approach. The answer is less government, not more. It's time for government to stop micromanaging our lives. It's time for government to stop trying to make us better people through regulation. It's time for government to step back so that Americans can step forward. That's the reason I want to go to Congress. I want to go to Washington to fight for our rights to just exist. To be ourselves without interference from government, to be able to marry who we want, to be able to put in our bodies what we want, to be able to possess what we want, to be able to run our businesses the way we want. All of these simple things are things the government thinks that we need help with. And it's time to show them that that's not the case. It's time for us to remind them that it is the people of America who built this country, not the government. If that idea excites you, if you like the idea of more freedom and less government, of more liberty, then come check us out at our Facebook page. It's KB4HR. That's KB, the number 4HR. We're just getting started. There's not a lot of content, but we're adding more regularly. We'd love for you to come be a part of what's going on here. And we'd love for you to show up and cast your vote for us in November. A vote for us will be a vote against government expansion. It'll be a vote in favor of the expansion of the rights of people, and a vote in favor of moving into a future with more freedom and more liberty. Thanks.
It's Friday. Are you ready to rumble? Joining me for tonight's Big Picture Rumble are Austin Peterson, Director of Production at FreedomWorks, S.E. Robinson, Deputy Director of the Paul Revere Project, and Sam Saggs, progressive writer and commentator. Thank you all for joining me. Thanks. And international superstar, television superstar. Okay. Okay, so much for Mitt Romney's debate bump. New jobs numbers released today show the economy added 114,000 jobs in September. The Department of Labor also said the economy added 86,000 more jobs than previously estimated in July and August. Most promising for President Obama's reelection hopes the unemployment rate dropped from 8.1% down to 7.8%, the lowest it's been since President Obama took office in January of 2009. The number of unemployed Americans, now at 12.1 million, is also at its lowest level since January of 2009. So cue the Republican conspiracy theory.
You're below 8%. So to the politics on this now.
That's where some of the mistrust comes in. Oh, how convenient that the rate drops below 8% for the first time in 43 months, 5 weeks before an election. That's why there's some mistrust of these numbers, along with...
So, is anyone on our panel a jobs truther? You don't trust the numbers?
Well, I'm apt to believe what Barack Obama says about an unemployment level of 7.8%. It's disaster. It's a catastrophe. That's what he said when he took office. And so we're here, and all of a sudden we're happy to be at 7.8% unemployment. And I do think that there's something suspicious with these numbers.
We're not losing
I think
jobs a month.
I think one of the important things to look at in these numbers is to look at the unemployment rates around the 20 to 24 age cohort. I'm guessing. Yeah. I'm at least in that cohort, but the unemployment rates jumped, the largest increase in the month of September since 1983. So that's telling me that either they're not going back to school or they're taking part-time jobs, and most of them are part-time jobs.
Or they are.
You know, you can pick and choose when you want to be a conspiracy theorist here, really. Why wouldn't the administration cook the books before the midterms? Why wouldn't the administration try and cook the books around 10% when the unemployment is at 10%? Look, just today, the Daily Caller has an article up saying the CBO is confirms that we've had trillion-dollar deficits the last 4 years. Should we trust the CBO numbers now? It's like they conveniently pick and choose. There doesn't need to, the job truthers, they don't need to exist. I agree with Essie. I mean, optically, this looks good politically for the president. It's below 8%. It kind of disarms the Republicans who say 44 straight months of unemployment above 8%. But really, the numbers still suck. I mean, you've got U6, which is still about 14%. These are all low-wage jobs, but this isn't because of Barack Obama. I mean, this is 30 years in the making here.
And don't forget
That's
also...
pretty naive to think that this just suddenly happened in 4 years, that we are in this collapsing economy.
Right, there's no jobs truthers on this panel right now. It's disingenuous to say that these job numbers are so disastrous or that the president cooked the books on these. The job numbers are fairly clear. But the thing is that if you look at Obama's mindset between 2008 Obama and 2012 Obama, the 2008 Obama was declaring that we needed to have a major stimulus to recover the economy when we have the exact same numbers now, and he's not doing the same thing. So why is it that if our economy needed a major stimulus then, that we don't necessarily need a major stimulus now?
Okay, you're saying hang on just a second. You're saying we had the exact same numbers. Let's put these numbers back up. These don't look to me like the exact same numbers. The beginning in the blue is when Obama came into office. The red is the end of the Bush administration. And when they started kicking up in that third month, that's when the stimulus happened. And everything here is since the stimulus. These do not look to me like the same numbers.
Right, from WhiteHouse.gov. Right?
WhiteHouse.gov. I'd also point out that there are two Bureau of Labor Statistics economists who have donated to the Obama campaign.
When it's about job creation,
it's not
oh
a
my God! You mean you've got people who have a job who are actually donating to political campaigns?
When it's about job creation, we have to.
How many government employees are donating to Barack Obama?
And remember, the federal unemployment rate is around 3 or 4%, so they're not really hurting that badly for a job.
And 600,000 of the 800,000 job increase, new jobs from this period,
So
they're
it's-
public jobs.
When it's about
This
job
is
creation,
more government.
When it's about job creation, we'll question the numbers. When it's about debt and deficits, the numbers are just fine, right?
Do you guys disagree with this unprecedented $16 trillion debt and a $1 trillion a year deficit? Are we disagreeing on that? I thought we were pretty well
As
settled.
far as what Austin was saying, the president's not proposing a stimulus package. I mean, he has proposed it. They're fairly modest. The American Jobs Act is a fairly modest thing. That's the bare minimum of what can be done. You have the Progressive Caucus coming out with, a Green New Deal. You have presidential candidates running on Green New Deal, massive investments. We still need major government involvement.
Like the stimulus. That did so much wonderful
it
stuff,
did something.
right?
It didn't do near enough,
If
though.
they didn't do anything, then why would we want to do it again?
Look at this chart behind you. It clearly did something. It didn't do enough, though.
It got us right back where we were.
Stock market, and that's because we've inflated.
They were going down until the stimulus.
Is that a
we were
coincidence?
losing more and more and more
Neither
jobs.
Wall Street or Main Street is going to suddenly believe that things are better in the Obama economy just because some economist at the Bureau of Labor Statistics tells them
Right,
so.
and after that debate performance the other night, he hasn't convinced anybody that he knows anything about the economy.
Well, I don't disagree with you on that, but the point is that this that the stimulus did work. We didn't go into the Great Depression up until the stimulus was put into place. We were following Herbert Hoover's policies.
Yeah, the stimulus
and we
paid somebody
and
like
we
that
would have
right.
gotten 3 years of Herbert Hoover if you'd had John McCain as president.
And I'd like, looking at that chart, is that a coincidence?
Right,
When the job losses
every
stop.
time that you stimulate, you have to destroy a job. You have to take a job out of the private
nonsense.
sector and you create a government
That's
job.
absolute
There's that
nonsense.
which is seen, and then there's that which is
absolute
unseen.
nonsense.
No, it is.
If you decide that you're going to build,
It is.
build a lodge at Yosemite, you're not taking out a
Yeah, it
private
is
job.
because
In fact,
you're taking a job
generating
from a private
jobs.
worker. If I'm going to if I have to pay more in taxes, I'm going to hire less workers if I'm in the private sector.
Every time you create a teacher, you lose a Walmart worker.
Yeah, somehow.
Why do you make poor people?
in magic
What's wrong with the
conservative
job?
land.
Wait a minute.
Okay, let's move along to Romney's tax plans. Just as we suspected, the Romney campaign is employing the etch-a-sketch strategy. Here was Romney surrogate Congressman Phil Gingrey explaining how Romney is now changing his positions from the Republican primary to look like a moderate in the general election and appeal to moderate voters.
The Republican, the conservative candidate in the primary is always going to lean right and come back to the center for the general, the opposite for the Democrat. That's all you're seeing here. It's very typical. We strong conservatives understand that. There are a lot of undecideds in this country that are hopefully right of center, not left of center, but we want those votes too. So this is campaign strategy. This is nothing new.
And we saw in the debate Romney run away from his very own tax plan.
I'm not in favor of a $5 trillion tax cut. That's not my plan. My plan is not to put in place any tax cut that will add to the deficit. That's point one. So you may keep referring to it as a $5 trillion tax cut, but that's not my plan.
Okay, simple fact. We take in about $2 trillion a year in taxes. It was $1.92 trillion last year. It'll be a little over $2 trillion this year. Inflation, the economy grows. Over 10 years, that's $20 trillion, right? We're all with it on the arithmetic here. Figure in inflation and a growing economy over a 10-year period, it's really going to be about $25 trillion. Mitt Romney wants to chop 20% off that. What's 20% of 25? 5. How can Mitt Romney stand there and say to all of America, I'm not in favor of a $5 trillion tax cut, when he just spent a year running around saying, I want a 20% across-the-board tax cut, all taxes? That's $5 trillion. This math is indisputable, Austin.
Well, no, you're going to have to let the conservative defend Mitt Romney here because
I reject your premise that he's trying to raise cut taxes by $5 trillion. First of all, Obama's claim was based on a study. No, the claim was based on a study by the Tax Policy Center.
I'm not quoting any claim, and I'm not quoting Obama. I'm quoting the actual numbers.
Obama's claim about a $5 trillion tax cut came from a Tax Policy Center study that in the abstract will tell you that they don't.
Are you denying that we're collecting $2 trillion a year in taxes right now?
No, I'm saying.
Okay, are you denying that 2 times 10 is 20?
Romney was not running away
from his tax plan. But what are you guys both so worried about? Both candidates are going to grow government anyway. You're just going to get a slight decrease in spending from a Romney presidency. You both should be happy. Liberals or conservatives should all be very happy with the growth of government.
I would be.
Because anybody who cares about liberty or freedom or free market markets, they're screwed. Anybody who is a working poor, people
None of us care about liberty or freedom over here.
Absolutely not.
We don't care about liberty or freedom.
This is about us.
Liberty is terrible.
This is about us versus
we've
the
got to
state.
have liberty for the Koch brothers. I get it. We've got to deregulate their oil plants and their paper mills and things. Let them poison more people.
I'm not in the Koch conspiracy, whatever that has to do with, Tom.
I understand what deregulation is code for.
It's not surprising at all that Romney is running away from the positions he took in the Republican primary, because the Republican Party has been completely co-opted by Wall Street, by billionaires. Parts of the Democratic Party have too. I'm not going to apologize for them too. But, they have to pledge themselves to never-ending war. They have to pledge themselves to their eccentric billionaire donors like Foster Friess, who think that Advil is a good, between the knees is a good
but we're going to get that no matter what.
The surge in Afghanistan,
no
that was
matter
Obama's
which candidate
never-ending
wins, we lose, ladies and gentlemen. Whether if you're for limited government or if you're anti-war.
So I got it. You're not going to be happy until there is no government. The thing that the founders fought and died for, to hell with all that.
Don't get me too excited, Tom.
I mean, I was inspired by Mitt Romney's performance, and I was even more inspired by the lack thereof on Obama's part.
How is the Mitt Romney that we saw, this is what's going on right now. The Mitt Romney we saw on TV a couple of nights ago is completely different than the Mitt Romney who was, trashing Newt Gingrich just 6 months ago.
I think that an Etch-a-Sketch could have done a better job than Obama did.
I'm talking about Romney. How do you guys feel comfortable? How can a conservative be supportive of a guy who started out as a moderate or even a liberal, arguably, then became a severe conservative, and now has become a moderate again?
I'll tell you why.
This is a guy who will say anything to win.
That's what I'm liking about him. That's what I'm liking about him. I'm not trusting that he's going to do what he's going to say.
As long as it's working, crowd, he will be in favor of same-sex marriage, and then you'll still support him.
That's Obama, and he also likes to take on a Southern drawl when he's speaking in front of predominantly black audiences.
Well, Scalia came out today and said that laws against sodomy, laws against gay sex, are, we're law in the United States for 200 years. That's a no-brainer. Of course, that's not unconstitutional. In other words, forget about gay marriage. If you happen to be gay and have sex with somebody in Scalia land, you go to prison for the rest of your life or for a good long time. And if we get Romney, we're going to get more Scalias. Is that really?
No, if we get more Obamas, we're going to get more Scalias. You understand?
No, if you get more Obamas, you're going to get more Elena Kagan.
How many sodomies are there in jail right now for sodomy? How many people have been actually arrested in jail for sodomy?
The Supreme Court struck down that law in Texas. But if you get
who's in jail for sodomy? No one.
Actually, there probably still are people from the old leftover laws. But if you get more Scalias, you are going to see that happen. He proclaimed it today at the American Enterprise.
I could use more Clarence Thomases. Less Scalias, more Clarence Thomases for me, for this guy right here, this libertarian. But
you're gonna get a heart attack.
I know, exactly. I'm sorry. I can't take either side in this debate, because if you got Obama or you have Romney, no matter what, you're going to have a growth in government. And liberty, as government expands, liberty contracts.
The simple fact of the matter is that if you look over the last 60, 70 years, and you aggregate Republican administrations and Democratic administrations, you've had GDP growth far more substantial in Democratic administrations than in Republican administrations.
I mean, population.
It's a simple fact of the matter.
Populations grow, economies grow, government has to grow in proportion if it's going to do its job. But so there has to.
I'm not talking about the growth of government. I'm talking about the growth of
the conservative ethos is laid bare right here. They are for the growth in government as well. There really is only two sides to this debate. There is the individual versus the collective. And so you see right now what a joke it is, these debates that we're having in this country right now. Because no matter who wins...
Are you asserting that there is no such thing as society, that society is merely a collection of individuals?
That's correct, because the problem is...
That is such nonsense.
They confuse the distinction between government and society.
That's like saying there's no such thing as a city, it's just a collection of houses.
Just because I don't want government education doesn't mean that I don't want education. Just because I don't...
There's no such thing as society.
Doesn't mean that I want the government to run water. There is a confusion of distinction. Socialists confuse that.
Wait a minute. You're saying that if there is no society, there's merely a collection of individuals, then there's no cities. There's merely a collection of houses.
That's correct. Well, you're saying you're missing the forest of the trees.
More on tonight's Big Picture Rumble after the break. Welcome back to the Big Picture Rumble. Joining me are Austin Peterson, Director of Production of FreedomWorks, S.E. Robinson, Deputy Director of the Paul Revere Project, and Sam Sachs, progressive writer and commentator. Let's get back to it. The next presidential debate is going to be focused on national security. Already, the Obama administration is running ads, or somebody on their side is running ads against Romney, questioning whether or not he's ready to be commander-in-chief. Take a look.
This is Mitt Romney grasping after straws.
Mitt Romney today didn't really have anything to say about Syria.
He gave very little detail on how he would change U.S. foreign policy.
His remarks about Afghanistan have been utterly confusing.
You didn't mention U.S. troops and the war in Afghanistan in your nomination acceptance speech.
When you give a speech, you don't go through a laundry list. You talk about the things that you think are important.
Are you saying the troops aren't important to you?
Our national security is not important.
There's nothing more important to me
than keeping our country safe.
I served as a corporal.
I was a captain, infantry officer, captain in the United States Army.
United States Marine Corps.
Do you have any idea how dangerous this role is? You don't seem to have a plan, Mr. Romney. You've shown us from London to Libya that you're in over your head. That's what scares me most.
For you, Mr. Romney, it's about politics.
For us, it's about defending our country. Defending our freedom. We deserve a commander-in-chief that understands what's at stake. But to trust you as commander-in-chief? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
As a veteran, I don't think so.
So I think it's particularly interesting that this is not coming from the Obama campaign, but from the Truman Project. It's going to be interesting to see the Obama campaign coming against Mitt Romney. Sam, what are your thoughts on how this is going to play out?
Well, I think to the majority of the electorate, I think President Obama is probably going to win this debate. I mean, he can come out and he can tout that he's ended the Iraq War. He can tout that he's ending Afghanistan. He can tout he killed bin Laden. Of course, to his far left base, to people like me, there's also the drone wars that he's going to be touting. There's going to be all the stuff that his far left base is pretty freaking angry about. I mean, he probably won't tout drone wars, but they know that exists. He might mention the strikes he's taken out Al-Qaeda's top leaders, and we'll know what that means.
28 to 32.
You know, we talk about undecided voters. I think there's a lot of undecided voters on the left who are figuring out whether or not they're going to vote for Jill Stein or Barack Obama when it comes to. Maybe Chomsky came out the other day and said if he lived in a swing state, he'd do a self-defense vote for Barack Obama, which is
libertarians like me are so excited for a Mitt Romney presidency, and the only reason we're really excited for it is because
the country.
No, because the anti-war left will finally come out of the woodwork. We'll actually see Code Pink starting to speak out again.
Oh, yeah, have a war in Iran.
Right. Well, actually, all the pot activists are going to come out, and then they're going to find their principles again. But if you really look at it, what's the major difference between the foreign policy of Barack Obama and Mitt Romney? Please, liberals, tell me.
Well, I don't know. I don't have any idea what Mitt Romney's foreign policy is, and that's the problem.
I can guarantee you the extrajudicial killings are going to continue, that the assassinations of American citizens without due process are going to continue, and you're going to get the status quo. So
right, Austin, but let's be clear about what these wars are.
Has to answer to Obama's record.
Let's be clear about what these wars are. These are corporate wars. These are wars that are being fought by corporations that would rule in your view of the world.
The mercantilism.
These are for oil companies. These are for defense contractors.
It's the Hamiltonian mercantilism that Tom Hartman has said that he supports on this show.
War is profitable. That's where the free market will take us.
So the government has to step in and make sure that we keep our shipping lanes open.
We don't have a government.
We've got to keep oil flowing in the United States.
That is
damn right we do, but that's installed by the government, right? We have it installed by the state.
That is not mercantilism. SE.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, we can't treat Mitt Romney like he's been president for the last 4 years. Obama has been president. And that's the person that's in charge of foreign policy, and he has withdrawn from Iraq. Oh, yeah, great. But it's less stable and closer to just being a tinderbox than ever before. Afghanistan, where Obama led 20,000 plus strong surge in there and then pulled it back out, was a totally wrong straw. Why would a Democrat come in here? Why would you even be trying to defend his policy in Afghanistan?
Defending his policy.
He sent in a surge that just was demonstrably not the right way to deal with a tribal situation.
So what was the right way to deal with it?
And a smaller, more restrained presence, because it doesn't leave so large a cultural footprint.
Why not make such a small presence that we're not there?
No, USAID contracts coming in and trying to make Americanized version of Sesame Street.
I'll tell you what a libertarian would do to protect the United States. The Constitution has a specific policy for dealing with terrorists, and it's called letters of marque and reprisal. And you put a bounty on the head, and you say that if you harm any civilian in this strike, you will be held accountable. Instead, we have a drone war that kills civilians, and it causes more terrorists down the line. But if we use these constitutional letters of marque,
marketplace.
Yeah, you're damn right I would. Absolutely. I would use the marketplace to stop terrorism, and I would also make it so that no civilians could ever be harmed. But now we cause more terrorists by the war that Obama wages right now by killing civilians. So
then you get vigilantes running around with guns, and
they're held under the law.
One of them comes after you and says, hey, I can make $1 million if I take out a guy who looks like this guy.
They are held liable under the law.
Wrong guy.
Absolutely not. They are held liable under the law. Anyone who is under the constitutional letter of marque who harms anyone that is not named in the letter.
And the wrong people were never killed.
Absolutely.
So will the free market just naturally guide us to some profitable war on terror?
This is just such a joke, Sam, because you say that you're against this drone war right now, and you're just so totally disingenuous. If you really
Answer
care,
the question. Wouldn't that happen? Wouldn't the free market naturally take us there?
You would look at these issues. There are
we just have 10
legal ways to take
seconds
care of
left.
this.
SC, what is Romney's foreign policy?
Romney's foreign policy is to create a Reagan economics zone that would, much like the Millennium Challenge Corporation, would lead other nations to become responsible international actors by luring them with the benefits of free trade and the ideas that have made America great the last 200 years. Two words. Here's his foreign policy: status quo.
All right, video from Wednesday night's debate has been circulating on the internet, and it appears to show Mitt Romney putting something on the podium at the beginning of the debate, while a Romney spokeswoman has said it was just a handkerchief that he was like sneaking out and dropping down there. Much of the social media world is wondering if the mysterious object is a set of notes, maybe even stashed in a napkin, which would mean that Romney cheated. So what do you think? Is Romney a cheater? Here at the end of this video, he goes back and he grabs the paper and sticks it in his pocket. And so
I mean, I would if it was me. They gave the Allies the maps of France on a little handkerchief when they invaded.
Cheat if you could.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, SC.
If you're not cheating, you're not trying. But what I'm going to say is that for the people who actually believe that he was cheating, I think it's a tremendous insult to Barack Obama that he could lose that spectacularly all because he had a little piece of paper.
Agreed.
Well, he did wipe his nose with it, so it might have been a handkerchief. It could have had notes with it, but he also, when he was shaking everybody's hand after using it, he should have been fist bumping people.
Okay. Yes, hand sanitizer. Austin, SC, Sam, thank you all for being with us today. Thanks, all.
Thank you.
You do it.